Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land. We'd like to pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. On behalf of the Mental Health Foundation of Australia, its patrons, Board of Directors and Chairperson Mr. Vasan Srinivasan, I would like to welcome you all to the National Mental Health Month event, Sportspersons Mental Health Symposium. My name is Narasimhan Ravi and I'll be your MC for today. I'd first like to invite Auntie Peggy Tiddiman for acknowledgement of country. Auntie Peggy is a descendant of the Gungari people from southwest Queensland. In 2018, Auntie Peggy was awarded the City of Logan Citizen of the Year in recognition of a remarkable commitment to Logan community. She is a highly respected elder in Brisbane and across Queensland. She has been the chairperson of the Logan District Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders Corporation for Elders for 14 years and a past director of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders Legal Service, a Universal Peace Ambassador, and worked as a counsellor with the Education Queensland for 32 years. She has recently taken up a voluntary position with the Queensland Women's Health Network Inclusive, devoting her time delivering cultural training with schools, service providers and interest groups. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Auntie Peggy Tiddiman.
Yimbali, Ukumendaya, Yuwala. In my traditional language, Gungari language, that is hello and welcome. First of all, it is my cultural responsibility as an elder to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we are gathered today, the Yagara people, and also acknowledging other groups within this area, the Jagara and the Yugarapul people. So the Yagara Nation extends north of the Logan River, all the way up to the foothills of the Toowoomba Range. I also want to pay my respects to elders both past, present and emerging. And in doing that, I also want to acknowledge elders of all cultures who now come to this land and call this land home. And as an elder, there is a third protocol that we must observe, and that is acknowledging sorry business. And I want to acknowledge sorry business from right across our country, but also right around the globe. So we can see a lot of suffering through COVID-19. And it is something that impacts on all people and all communities. I do an acknowledgement of country because I am not a traditional descendant of this area. So my traditional lands are in southwest Queensland. And I am a descendant of the Gungari people on my father's side. My mother's people are Bidjara, and they are from the Charleville area. But my country takes in an area called Carnarvon Gorge. So if you know where Carnarvon Gorge is, it is a very, very spiritual place. And so I want to acknowledge all of the dignitaries that are here with us today. And I want to personally acknowledge the Honourable Peter Dutton, our federal member for Dixon. And I have had the pleasure of meeting with you and speaking with you personally. I also want to acknowledge all of the other dignitaries that are here today for this important event. So the National Symposium on Sportspersons, Mental Health and Wellbeing. And I know that the people that are gathered in this room and also the people that are also connecting through Zoom or other means, that Australia has got a fantastic plan that we know, the people that are working in mental health and wellbeing, that is something that we can all learn from. So for my people, it is something that is highly on the agenda, mental health and wellbeing. And so I spoke with the National Committee, the Vice Chairperson, and I just said, how do you become an ambassador, a mental health ambassador? And the next day I knew I was an ambassador. So I'm very pleased to join you all as a mental health ambassador, mental health and wellbeing ambassador, and I hope that everyone has a very successful day. Thank you.
Thank you, Auntie Peggy Teddyman. Ladies and gentlemen, the National Mental Health Month is an initiative of the Mental Health Foundation of Australia to advocate for and raise awareness of Australian mental health. It is an important time where the Australian community comes together to raise awareness that mental health matters. The National Mental Health Month is unlike many other mental health awareness campaigns. It aims to bring us together in a nationwide conversation about mental health and maintain this high conversation on Australian mental health for the entire month. As part of the National Mental Health Month, the Foundation has successfully run 3 mental health symposiums on teachers' mental health, farmers' mental health, and homelessness and mental health. Today's National Sportspersons Mental Health Symposium will focus on athletes. This symposium aims to raise awareness about mental health and well-being amongst athletes, coaches, sports clubs and associations, and to have a discussion on the status of support services available to them. Let's talk. Please join us to celebrate Mental Health Foundation Australia's 90 years journey of promoting better mental health for all.
A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Mental Health Foundation Australia's journey began 90 years ago. It dawned in 1930 with just a founder and vision, which was to reach and impact Victoria. Now we have a presence in all states and changing lives for over 100,000 people throughout Australia. Our organisation's biggest initiative yet is our National Mental Health Month. Our month-long initiative is to advocate and raise awareness on Australian mental health. Our vision is to recharge and educate as many Australians as possible to help reduce stigma and facilitate positive and non-judgmental discussions surrounding the important topic of mental health in Australia. With the theme being Mental Health Matters, the awareness is cumulative. In 30 events we have organised to reach the community in all mental health subject matters affecting our lives today. To further continue our journey of 1,000 miles, the Walk for Mental Health has transitioned from a Victoria-only walk to being a nationwide community walk where anybody from anywhere in Australia can connect with us and walk with us virtually to spread the impact and awareness of mental health. We pride ourselves with making sure all our programs are for the community and are powered by the community. We have a vast growing network of multicultural ambassadors who are part of our program to further the community voice in promoting positive mental health and well-being. Our multicultural network has inspired our educational and multicultural webinars as an initiative to help power Fidelity to cope with success during the pandemic, to promote the understanding of unique cultural and ethnic heritage in Australia and the development of culturally responsible and responsive curricula. The Mental Health Foundation of Australia conducted the multicultural research to continue on the development of the fast-growing multicultural Fidelity in Australia. With the effects of COVID-19 pandemic, the MHFA has successfully committed the Power Hour of services and the reach to the community. With the helpline hours extended, we are here to show Australians we can be a shoulder to lean on and can be dialed to assist in all mental health matters. Our impact flows into the COVID-19 meal delivery response with the help of the community, local business and our multicultural ambassadors. It has promoted one vision, which is to serve others before self during this time of uncertainty. With over 45,000 meals delivered, we continue to work with the Department of Health, the Human Services, the Salvation Army and the Australian Multicultural Foundation to continue this success. As we continue to work to deepen understanding the importance of mental well-being and educating the community, let's work together to bring better mental health for all.
Now it's time for our welcome address. Curly is the Director of Mental Health Foundation of Australia. In recent years, Curly has made a strong commitment to helping others and building stronger communities. Her primary area of focus has been issues related to mental health and well-being of working families, children, and education preparedness and employees from a non-English speaking background. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ms. Curly Dutton on stage.
Good morning, everybody. On behalf of the Mental Health Foundation of Australia, I'd like to welcome you all to the National Sportspersons Mental Health Symposium. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land. We would like to pay our respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. I'm very proud to be a director of the Mental Health Foundation of Australia and equally proud of the amazing work they do in the community to support mental health. You will be aware of the tough lockdown conditions Melburnians are currently enduring. However, very few of you would be aware of the meals delivery program that the Mental Health Foundation has been running over this period. Over the last 75 days, they have facilitated the preparation and delivery of 45,000 meals, with plans and systems in place to continue this vital service until January next year. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank and congratulate the team at Mental Health Foundation Australia, Victoria, for their very hard work and commitment to this program. For too long, mental health has been unaddressed in the Australian sporting landscape, but several athletes have recently opened up about their battles with depression and anxiety, and also revealed their struggles with mental health, dealing with their schedules of relentless training, competition and constant evaluation. With the recent outbreak of mental health issues in players, it is more important than ever to have a discussion on mental health matters. On behalf of the Mental Health Foundation Australia, I would like to welcome our presenters and panel members. Our presenters today are the Honourable Peter Dutton, MP, Federal Member for Dixon, Councillor Vicky Howard, Brisbane City Council, Mr Jim Gooden, the Vice Chairperson of the Mental Health Foundation of Australia, Mr Craig Foster, Australian soccer player, Professor Jean Moyle, Sports and Exercise Psychologist, Associate Dean, International and Advancement, QUT, Dr Kate Hall, Head of Mental Health and Wellbeing with the AFL, Mr Andrew Crowell, Head of Personal Excellence and Wellbeing with the Brisbane Lions. We will also be joined by panel members Rachel Jones, who is the Director of LIFT High Performance Consultants, and Krishnil Maharaj, the Director of the Mind and Movement Company. I welcome all of our dignitaries and participants who are joining us today and thank them for their support.
Thank you, Curly, for that wonderful address. It is my great pleasure to invite Councillor Vicky Howard, representing the Lord Mayor Adrian Skinner, for Brisbane Council for a welcome address. Councillor Vicky Howard was elected as Central Ward's first female councillor in 2012. Vicky made a commitment to work tirelessly every day to make Brisbane's vibrant inner northern villages the best place to work, rest and play in Australia's new world city. She was also instrumental in leading the creation of Brisbane's largest park in more than 50 years, with Victoria Park set to become the green heart of Brisbane and a protected place for our flora and fauna. Working alongside our amazing arts community, Vicky is proud to be a part of the council that supports and provides funding for so many landmark events, including the Brisbane Festival, Brisbane International Jazz Festival, Brisbane Portrait Prize, and the Brisbane Pride Festival. She's also working on a plan to revitalise the Riverside precinct, delivering more jobs, more opportunities, and more reasons to love our city. Re-elected by her community for a third term, Vicky is a senior member of Lord Mayor team, serving on Civic Cabinet as chair of the committee, Arts and Nighttime Economy Committee. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Councillor Vicky Howard on stage.
thank you very much. That introduction was almost as long as my speech will be, but it's fantastic to talk about the wonderful city of Brisbane. Can I begin, of course, by acknowledging the traditional custodians and paying my respects to elders past, present and emerging. And can I say a hello to all of our distinguished guests that are here today. It's always something when you're standing here to have to acknowledge everyone over and over again. So consider yourselves all acknowledged, because it's fantastic to see everyone here today, and particularly with some of the things that we're doing to come out of the COVID era. I'm particularly pleased to be here because I'm representing our Lord Mayor, Adrian Schrinner, and we're now halfway through National Mental Health Month, and it's such an important initiative that advocates for and raises awareness of mental health, and something that affects 1 in 5 Australians. The Mental Health Foundation of Australia is making a real and tangible difference on the front line of mental health. Their goal is to raise awareness about mental health, to remove the stigma, provide support and encourage people to seek help. Whether you have a lived experience with mental illness or know somebody going through it, by being here today, you are part of a fantastic journey towards improving the well-being of the community. The challenges of this year have brought the conversation about mental health further into the spotlight. Worries and fear of sickness, lockdown restrictions and job stability have taken an extreme toll on our mental health. Mental health is not often discussed in the Australian sporting landscape, but several athletes have recently opened up about their battles with depression and anxiety. And I can only imagine the struggles athletes face with their schedules of relentless training, competition and evaluation. I'm sure over the course of this morning's symposium, we will hear incredible advice and guidance about improving our mental health and well-being. It's so important to talk about these issues and encourage open dialogue and honest conversations. I think everything we have faced this year has shown us just how important it is to be aware of our own mental well-being, and it has urged us to look out for those that are around us, be a family, friend, neighbour or stranger. The Are You OK program is fantastic, and we often use that when we're talking to our family. Being part of a tight-knit community is one way to prevent loneliness and isolation, which can go a long way in helping people who are suffering with mental illness. Council works hard to support all our residents, and one of the ways we do this is by creating safe and relaxing spaces that people can visit to unwind and reboot. There are more than 2,000 parks across Brisbane, and we're investing in over 100 new or upgraded parks this financial year. As was mentioned, Victoria Park will become Brisbane's biggest new park in 50 years, and it's just a stone's throw away from the CBD and will be accessible by our wonderful Brisbane Metro. So we're working with local residents to create community gardens and composting hubs to help foster that sense of community. It's the simple things like taking a walk with a friend, exercising in one of our local parks, or spending time in nature that can go a long way in helping people to connect. So thank you for listening to me today. Thank you to the Mental Health Foundation of Australia for all the incredible work that you do. And can I leave you just by asking you to be kind to each other? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wiki Howard. Now it's time for the official launch of our event. The Honourable Peter Dutton is the Member for Dixon and Minister for Home Affairs. In August 2018, Peter was sworn in as the Minister for Home Affairs. The Department of Home Affairs has responsibility for national security, federal law enforcement, border protection, emergency management, cyber security and critical infrastructure. First elected to the Australian Parliament as the member for Dixon in November 2001 at age 30, Peter became one of the youngest ministers since Federation when appointed to the ministry by Prime Minister John Howard in 2004. In January 2006, he was promoted to Minister for Revenue and Assistant Treasurer and worked closely with Australia's longest-serving Treasurer, Peter Costello. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Minister Peter Dutton on stage for an official launch of Sportspersons Mental Health Symposium.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great honour to be here with you today. I want to say thank you in particular to all of those who have been involved either in a paid or volunteer capacity with the Foundation. It is a remarkable job that you do, and the lives that you impact on shouldn't be underestimated. And I hope that you can take from this latest symposium the very clear message from our community that your work is extremely valued, and we're very grateful for, particularly in this strange year of 2020, the way in which you've been able to reach out and to engage with the Australian community, and in particular today to have a focus on sports men and women and their mental health and wellbeing, and not just at a professional level but also at a club level as well, which has been a very disruptive space for many families and participants over the course of this calendar year. I'd like to, firstly, Auntie Peggy, thank you very much for your welcome to country and acknowledgement this morning. I think it's fantastic that you're an ambassador and that you've formalised your relationship with the Foundation. You're a person with a great deal of respect in our local community here in Brisbane, and I think your words earlier really resonate, and I've heard you speak on a number of occasions, and I'm really proud of the work that you do in our community, so thank you very much. To Jim as well, thank you to you and to Vasan and to the board, to the directors, and for the work that you do. Many hours, no doubt now over Zoom and email, etc., but you really provide a great contribution to this organisation, and I'm very, very happy to be here. Vicky Howard, thank you very much for what you do in this great city. It's nice to be at a symposium or at a forum in your home city, not having to travel as much, and I'm here representing the Australian Government, Vicky, the Brisbane City Council, and the work that she and the Lord Mayor have done in making this a more livable city over the course of recent years has been quite remarkable, and for many people the outdoor space and the availability of that amenity has been very important over the course of this year as well. So thank you for what you do. I can acknowledge my wife as well, Kira Lee, who's a director on the board of the Foundation and is really passionate about mental health issues, particularly for young kids and families, and I'm very proud that she's a part of that cause as well. Well, so far this year I've spent firstly 26 days in self-isolation, then followed by 14 after I came back from Parliament, and I don't pretend to be an expert on self-isolation, but it is a big mental adjustment for anybody in our society, and I have special thoughts at the moment for those people in Victoria. Hopefully their time in isolation with curfews, etc., is coming to an end, and we hope that kids can be back at school, we hope that people can be back in their businesses, we hope that sport can continue to be played, and we hope that our society can return to normal as quickly as possible. But the reality is, for us and for most parts of the world, COVID is going to be with us for a long period of time, and it's important that we put in place measures to provide support. We know that just in Victoria alone, in the month between September and October, the number of Medicare-funded mental health items has increased by 31%. And that is quite a phenomenal period compared to this time last year. We know that the work of the Foundation obviously is ramped up, but of other organisations providing support to our community over the course of this calendar year as well. And in the state of Victoria, to dwell on that for a moment, data has shown a 33% increase in child and youth contacts in community mental health services for eating disorders. In response, the Commonwealth Government obviously has worked with the other two levels of government and NGOs to provide financial support and to provide coordination through the Department of Health in particular, and the work of Greg Hunt in the response to COVID has been quite remarkable. But the government has invested just in 2020-21 alone about $5.7 billion, and we want to continue to make sure that we can provide support. In January, or since January, we've provided over $500 million of extra funding to rapidly scale up mental health services to help Australians deal with the impacts of the pandemic, and that work will continue. We saw the release of the National Suicide Prevention Advisor's draft interim report on suicide prevention, and the most recent budget provided $64 million to support some of the initial recommendations. I wanted to dwell though for a moment on our athletes, and as I said in my opening remarks, if you're a mum or dad of a son or daughter or somebody in your care group that is facing a prospect at the moment where kids aren't back at school or they've largely been disrupted during the course of this year, it is very confronting because sport is such a significant aspect of our life, and for families that has been a very difficult issue to deal with. Children that have had their sporting routines disrupted, where they've been such a significant part of that child's life for so long, is something that we really should stand back and take note of. But in particular, there are enormous pressures on our professional athletes. We concentrate as a country, and we're very proud of the athletes at the Tier 1, where we can be familiar with their names, with their expertise, with their international standing, and many of them are very well paid. And even some of them obviously have had their earnings and their own lives disrupted this year. But there are many, many thousands of Australians who are on the verge of professional status within their own chosen sport. There are many who are striving day and night, working in a part-time job or trying to get to the next level of their own sport. And it's them that we acknowledge today as well. And the work of the Foundation in acknowledging the stress and pressure that those athletes is going through, I think is quite an important piece of work for the Foundation to continue on, not just now, but post-COVID as well. We know that for many of those athletes, the pressures of social media as well are real. They read the Twitter feeds and they look at the Instagram and Facebook comments, etc., when perhaps they haven't performed as well as they would want to. And I think as a society, we need to reassess the way in which we are communicating via that means or via those platforms, because many of those comments have a hurtful impact on athletes and young people and people across society in particular. There are many pressures through social media on our society, and through sporting clubs and entities with the National Foundation, we need to make sure that I think we can recognise how it is that we can do that in a more effective manner. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great honour to be here with you today. I really do sincerely praise the work of the Foundation. I know that this is going to be a very useful forum, not just for those in the room, but for those who are watching virtually. I noticed through the promo video before that most of those photos would have been taken in a pre-COVID environment. At least I hope that's the case, because people were sitting shoulder to shoulder, whereas today it's a much more laid out format, as is the norm, of course. But it does give me great pleasure to officially launch this National Symposium. I wish you in the Foundation every continued success. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, the Honourable Peter Dutton MP. And now I'd like to invite Mr. Jim Goodine to present the engraved pen to the Minister as a gesture of appreciation. And can we also have all the multicultural ambassadors to take a photo with the Minister up on stage? And all our VIPs too, please. Before we move on, I'd like to thank the National Mental Health Month's major sponsor, Australian Unity, for their constant support. Let's watch a quick video from our sponsor.
The way I felt at the time was about everything was pointless. I wasn't enjoying art. I wasn't enjoying getting under the bonnet of the car. I wasn't enjoying people because I was about as low as you could go at that point. I got a cold call letter, and it looked a little different to a lot of the other letters you normally get. It was a good letter. It had an offer of helping people to make them feel better. So I embraced this Mind Step program, and it just felt terrific to know that there was somebody else there apart from family, apart from friends, who was thinking about me, and I looked forward to the sessions we had. I feel so much more positive today than 2 years ago in the middle of that deep, deep depression. The Mind Step program was tremendously significant in getting me there.
Now it's time for our live guest address. Craig Foster is an Australian retired soccer player who, as of February 2019, is a sports analyst for the Special Broadcasting Service in Australia. He's renowned for his outspoken stance on the need for soccer in Australia to mature. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Craig Foster, who has joined us live from Sydney.
Hello all, I'm delighted to be with you. Sorry that I couldn't be there. Of course, these are the constraints of the times that we live in. I first want to start by acknowledging the traditional owners on the land on which I sit here in Randwick in Sydney, that is the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, to acknowledge that this land was never ceded and that in fact reconciliation with all of our Indigenous nations will ultimately, I believe, make this country whole. Well done to the Mental Health Foundation on this year's symposium on Sportspersons' mental health. Of course, it couldn't be more timely. Mental health has become one of the most prominent issues across broader society and in spaces where I'm spending much of my time, peripheral to sport, but in homelessness and many vulnerable communities who are needing support right now through organisations that I'm volunteering for, of course. There is an incredible amount of support that's required within the Australian context at this present time. I just want to focus on 4 key points for you in a short address, and I want to thank the Foundation for the opportunity to speak with you. Firstly, we do know, and it's good to see research in recent years, that sports people, particularly professional athletes, do report high to very high degrees of psychological distress, far higher, in fact, than the general prevalence in community for a vast variety of reasons. But I'll begin today, first point, by acknowledging all the wonderful work that's gone on in recent years. You know, when I played a very long time ago, there was very little support, and I'm delighted to see that sports are taking huge steps forward in this regard, as are, I might add, professional players' associations or player unions. Of course, I'm a former chairman and a life member of Professional Footballers Australia, the representative body of Socceroos, Matildas, A-League and W-League players, as well as our professionals abroad. And the work being done there around mental health programs for our professional footballers is really outstanding. For all of the sports, I know Australian Institute of Sport only 18 months ago or so, a couple of years, put in place a new program as well, which is patroned by the great Ian Thorpe, who himself showed tremendous leadership in discussing mental health issues in his autobiography. And I'd like to go to that point second around the leadership of athletes in this regard. You know, when a sport, as we know, has the power to influence society in a whole variety of ways. And when athletes, sports themselves, but particularly prominent athletes who have the love, the recognition and the trust of so much of society, when they speak openly, express their vulnerability, and talk about the mental health problems and issues that they've personally faced or seen within the sporting context, it's so important. It's so important for particularly the next generation and the children of Australia, seeing someone, a legend like Adam Goodes. And this is how far we've come. Where someone like Adam, you know, when he was being racially abused so disgracefully throughout those final years of his glittering AFL career, when Adam was talking openly about, you know, the mental health challenges that was bringing and, you know, elements of depression and having to get away from the sport, it's so powerful for the rest of us, and I include myself in that, because, you know, all of us can see someone that we trust and really deeply respect talking about his own challenges that he's facing. Other athletes have done likewise, and I just wanted to acknowledge Chelsea Randall of the Adelaide Crows, Dane Beams and Adam Treloar as other examples, particularly in AFL. Really important. So well done to them. So the programs have come a long way. This symposium is another great step forward in collaboration and discussion about what the immediate and medium to long-term future looks like. But well done to those athletes across all those sports who've been willing to make themselves vulnerable in the public domain and speak about what has been a taboo issue, not just socially, but very much within the context of professional sport. So well done to them all. I deeply respect that. Thirdly, I'd like to just point out that we do have severe challenges in sport that we need to address, and two of those in particular are around the mental health stresses on the LGBTI community within sport, and particularly gay male athletes. You know, we have a footballer who plays in the National Premier League, if you like, the second tier of football in Australia in Victoria. His name is Andy Brennan, and Andy is a tremendously courageous young man who has, you know, openly discussed his homosexuality within the macho context of Australian football. And it's been fabulous to see all of the support that both, you know, player associations and the Australian Athletes Association, AAA, and broader sport has given Andy. But we do know that, of course, there are other gay male athletes across the whole panoply of professional sport in Australia who, for whatever reason, don't feel comfortable to express their true selves, and that's not right. And for the sporting community and the sporting industry, we should be challenged by that immediately. Let's take the lead from great Australians like Andy Brennan and Ian Thorpe, of course, and others. And Ian Roberts, you know, the legendary rugby league player, so many decades ago now, who showed such tremendous purpose and resolve in this regard. And let's do better. And let's make every athlete comfortable to express their true selves, their full selves, both within sport and provide those environments for all, but also, you know, in the public domain. The other one, of course, is women in sport, which, you know, I heard Peter Dutton speaking to you about only a few moments ago. Women in sport are under tremendous duress in a whole range of areas, and many of us are deeply committed to supporting women, particularly when they are attacked in the public domain on social media, which they are disproportionately having to endure. You've seen, you know, the fabulous AFLW players who have stepped up and spoken out about this, which is so important. And even in the sporting context, not just Sportspersons, but, you know, my beloved colleague, former colleague now, Lucy Zelich, you know, within the sports broadcasting area, was viciously attacked on social media only a couple of years ago during the Russian World Cup. in part and in large part simply because she was a woman in what is still a largely male-dominated domain. So let's do better as a sporting industry. Let's acknowledge that we need to support women in sport, whether it's in sport journalism, sport broadcasting, or sport itself, and the athletes who are on the field. And finally, I'd just like to acknowledge those athletes who, during COVID-19, have stepped up and supported sectors of the community which perhaps they might not have done earlier. And I do think that this is an important element of the mental health of all of us, and in this context of athletes. Throughout COVID-19, I created a new campaign called Play for Lives, Not Points. And the point of this was for a sporting fraternity and industry that was going to be closed down. We knew that we were going to stop playing, and rightly, to encourage all of us, clubs, grassroots organisations, professional sporting clubs and governing bodies, and particularly high-profile athletes, to utilise that time to go into communities and support vulnerable people in whatever way they possibly could. I'm talking here about, in particular in my context, asylum seeker and refugee communities who we know, have largely been left out of the government stimulus programs and have needed that support just to get food from today to tomorrow. We also talk about, the increase in homelessness and unemployment in Australia, and indeed all of these cohorts who are, having greater struggles with mental health. The reason I mention this is because what in my experience it's done is it's brought professional sports people closer to vulnerable communities which they would otherwise quite possibly never have met. It's also perhaps provided a little bit of additional perspective. Some of the wonderful Sydney Swans players, and in fact Ty Kennelly, the assistant coach, said to me at an organisation here in Sydney, Addison Road, a community centre where we've been volunteering almost daily for the last 6 months, they came down and packed some food hampers and actually met the Indigenous women and the refugees and asylum seekers and people walking off the street needing food hampers. And Ty turned to me and said, you know what, this really is the most fantastic thing for all of us right now, because sport does tend to, we're so focused on having to achieve, and rightly, it does place us in this environment where we can be disconnected from people in society who need our help. And we have a voice, we have a profile, and I can help these people now by seeing also the situation they're in. It does provide some really important perspective on my own life. And what Ty said is, you know what, I've spent 15, 20 years as a player and now as an assistant coach, and I've given everything to that, including the time that I perhaps could spend with my children, including some time perhaps that I can give to other sectors of society. And what COVID-19 and this initiative Play for Lives has done, and this is not only Ty, by the way, this is many of the people and athletes who supported us, including Matilda's Melissa Barbieri and many other legends, have said, look, this has provided a little bit different perspective, an opportunity for me to really reconsider the priorities in my life. Sport is important to me, but I also now understand that other people need my help. That, I think, is an important step here that sport can do more in, and I'd love to see sport become far more active in social causes, social responsibility, and helping out vulnerable communities. So, well done to you all. I fully support, I congratulate the Foundation on what you're doing in this symposium. You have all my support, and thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you today.
Thank you so much, Mr. Craig Foster. As a token of appreciation, an engraved pen will be posted to you.
Thank you.
Now it's time for our next address. Dr. Kate Hall is a clinical psychologist, senior academic, and the head of mental health and wellbeing at the AFL. She has worked with AFL and AFLW footballers for many years to address mental health conditions and optimise wellbeing. In her role as the head of mental health and wellbeing at the AFL, she is leading an industry-wide mental health strategy that focuses on the prevention of mental health issues through building mental health fitness alongside physical fitness. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Dr. Kate Hall, who has joined us live from Victoria.
Thank you. I'd just like to thank the Foundation for the invitation to be here and, of course, to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land where I am in lockdown stage 4 here in Melbourne, the people of the Kulin Nation. I'd like to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and take the opportunity to say thanks, Craig, for such a brilliant introduction to the area of sport and mental health. I think, you know, one of the things that has tested the AFL so much this year, as I'm sure you're all aware of the impact of the COVID pandemic on our game. We've had a shadow pandemic occurring alongside that, and that so much has been the impacts on the mental health and wellbeing of people, not just our staff and our players, but our communities, and the far-reaching impacts that sport has on our health, on our wellbeing, and participation in our community sporting activities is one of those critical building blocks of wellbeing that has been interrupted through the pandemic. Our strategy during the pandemic has very much been to prioritise wellbeing equally to physical health and safety from a COVID perspective, and to ensure that we are promoting mental fitness equally to the physical fitness that we're so well known for as a professional sporting code. So that's what I am going to very briefly talk to you about today. I'm going to talk about the notion of mental fitness, and to discuss with you some of the strategies that we've been promoting across our entire industry. I have got a PowerPoint presentation, but I'm not sure if I'm meant to share it or if someone else there will share it, but I'll push on anyway. One of the things about this notion of mental fitness that we've adopted at the AFL is the idea that we're all in charge of what our mind deliberately cultivates and learns. And we have, you know, defined mental fitness in some respects as something that really is about purposefully cultivating what our mind learns and the mind skills that we need that serve us. One of the things that I guess we've heard a lot of is just how resilient our sports stars are through this pandemic, and many of the skill set that they have to endure the ongoing performance challenges. We've, you know, utilised those skills for them to endure the life sacrifices that they have had to adopt during this period. In our essence, what we want people to do in terms of prioritising and adopting these mental fitness skills is for them to invest in the prevention of mental health challenges along this continuum of mental health difficulties. So much of what we have pushed this year as an industry is the prioritisation of investing in your mental health early as possible, and even when we know that there are no mental health issues, but to treat mental health in the same way we would our physical health, and the cultivation of these mental fitness skills to be seen as equally important as taking 10,000 steps, drinking enough water, wearing a helmet whilst riding a bike. That these critical skills are things that we all are in charge of cultivating in order to inoculate ourselves against the immense stresses that we've encountered during the pandemic. We've moved away from the notion of waiting for signs of stress. We've moved away from the notion of intervening when someone is struggling. And we've really put forward this call for action across our industry for absolutely everybody to have a responsibility to invest in their mental health and wellbeing. And that's why I'm so delighted with the invitation from the Foundation today to speak about the prevention of mental health issues being as equally important in the sporting arena as our excellence in physical fitness, and that the science behind our physical excellence is not matched by what is occurring in our space for our mental fitness. So mental fitness is something that we have pushed because we really want this real deliberate cultivation of preventative measures to inoculate against these extreme stresses that sports people endure in their careers. We want those mental skills that they cultivate for on-field performance to be expanded out, to be able to be grown for thriving in their lives outside of sport, and we want those skills to give them a foundation for life transitions beyond their sport. And we want that to be for our professional athletes, and we want them to model that, as Craig has articulated, to all of the community footballers that aspire so much to play the game that their heroes play. One of the things that we've really pushed this year as a antidote to the pressures of social isolation is improving our social capital, and we've even cultivated super skills that we talk about in terms of our mental fitness super skills that we want our staff to prioritise, we want our players, we want our leaders to prioritise, and cultivating excellent social networks has never been more important, and creatively approaching that has been critical to our ability to absorb so many of the architecture of our well-being markers to be dismantled as it has done this year. We're really big on self-compassion and kindness, and making sure that in our high-performance environment where we have unrelenting standards around exceptionally high achievement, where we are quite hypercritical about driving for the best, that we balance that out. We don't forgo that, that's excellent, but we balance it out with equal investment in self-compassion and equal investment in treating ourselves as we would our teammates, our colleagues, our friends. And just having the perspective, as Craig has just so brilliantly articulated, about our Sydney Swans players assisting out others in our community and stepping outside our football bubble so that we can see the perspective that comes from walking for just that one moment in the shoes of someone else who has been so profoundly impacted by the pandemic. It'd be no surprise to anyone here that another of our super skills has been sleep. And we know that the pandemic has interrupted our routines and our rhythms in life. And one of the symptoms of that has been the impact on sleep. And so we've been training our staff and training everybody, even from, marketing in at our AFL headquarters through to our club staff who are based in Queensland in the hubs, in sleep hygiene, in ensuring that this is prioritised as a way for them to maximise their mental fitness and as this critical skill, and not waiting for our sleep to accidentally come to us, but purposefully cultivating an excellence and a mindset and a set of skills in terms of getting sleep so that our brains can recover and that we can absorb and manage the stress that we've endured this year. And the last mental fitness super skill that we've really promoted is emotional literacy, and ensuring that, our language is one which models appropriately naming emotion, that we can communicate emotions effectively, that we are able to not just model vulnerability, but the entire spectrum of emotional repertoires that are required in order for us to identify how we best succeed in this ever-changing environment. And that because we don't have a template and our fixtures never looked like this before, and nor have any of our games, and we've never played this season before, that we've had to really listen to a lot of those emotional clues that have come for us to find our way through this pandemic to get to the point where we're so close to completing our season in Queensland. So cultivating the mental skills that we've been promoting all year is this prevention mindset that we want to get in early. We want to cultivate skills that help us thrive. And these are the types of skills that we've put in place across all of our staff in order for them to support not just our athletes, but to support each other and to build the capability of our industry in order to, be resilient enough to endure and navigate through this system and through this pandemic that has impacted our game so significantly. So I encourage you to cultivate your own mental skills, and they might be very different to the ones that I've outlined, but it's certainly something that we would love to see prioritised equally as physical health, and that we have the same mindset around ensuring we get our 10,000 steps, that we approach our mental fitness with the same. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Kate Hole. And as a gesture of appreciation, an engraved pen will be posted to you as well. Now, it's time for some entertainment. Let's watch a vibrant performance from the Bollywood Dance School of Australia.
ज़्यादा बर्बाद और कोई नहीं है इस दुनिया में। बिल्लोरी निगाहों से करे हैं सा इशारे, खिड़की के नीचे नस बेटा सीटी मारे। बिल्लोरी निगाहों से करे हैं सा इशारे, खिड़की के नीचे नस बेटा सीटी मारे। इश्क में हुआ है थोड़ा अंधा थोड़ा बहरा, सैया मेरा ऐरा गरा नथु खरा। This year was born, als war es gesaven. This year was born. मस्ती के हमको राग गाएंगे, हम खुशियाँ रब से मांग लाएंगे। बिखरे सुरों से गीत बनाकर, टूटे हुए ख्वाबों को सजाकर, झूमो रे झूमो झूमरो, बुमरो बुमरो।
बढ़िया साबुन की टिकिया नहीं है जो तू धो धो के घस घस के फेंक डाले। मेरे होठों से धुआंधार निकलती है जो बोली, जैसे जैसे बंदूक की गोली, मेरे तेवर में तहजीब की रंगीन रंगोली, जैसे जैसे वो गीत में होली। मेरे जीवन की दशा थोड़ा रस्तों का नशा, थोड़ी मंजिल की प्यास है। बाकी सब फर्स्ट क्लास है। बाकी सब फर्स्ट क्लास है।
Wow, what a wonderful performance. Hopefully that was a really much needed break there. Now it's time for our keynote address. A graduate from the Australian Ballet School, QUT Dance, Jean pursued further studies in psychology, completing a master's and a doctorate in sport and exercise psychology. Working across the performing arts, elite sport and corporate sector, Jean has focused upon the application of performance psychology and performance enhancement within these domains. Jane has also supported a number of Olympic winter sports programs across 3 Olympic cycles and has worked extensively within the elite sporting system at both state and national level across winter and summer sports in both service provision and leadership roles, including Senior Advisor, Sport and Exercise Psychology at Queensland Academy of Sport and Senior Performance Psychologist at the Australian Institute of Sport. Jean has worked in the senior executive and management roles across a range of industries, including having held multiple positions on the boards and advisory committees. She is currently a board member of the Queensland Board of Psychology, the Queensland Board of and the Psychology Board of Australia. Non-executive director of the Queensland Ballot and a performance health advisory panel member for the Queensland Academy of Sport. She joined QUT Creative Industries faculty in 2012 and currently pursues the inaugural role of Associate Dean, International and Advancement. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our keynote speaker for today, Professor Jean Merle, on stage.
Thank you very much, everyone. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which we gather here today, the Yugara people, and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. I'm very grateful to the Mental Health Foundation of Australia for the opportunity to be here and talk about something that I'm passionate about. I'm a little bit biased as a psychologist in terms of thinking about and trying to raise awareness about mental health, so I'm very grateful for the opportunity to be here. I'd also like to acknowledge the previous speakers because they've just beautifully lined up and summarised a whole range of things for me to come in and limit myself to 20 minutes, which I'll also flag. I talk really fast when I get excited, so if you need to slow me down, let me know. So mental health and wellbeing in sport, as we've seen and heard about already, it's an issue that has an impact across all levels, so thinking about right from elite sport in terms of professional codes, Olympic sports, right down to our families and our sporting clubs and communities as well. So today, my focus is the experience that I've had primarily within elite sporting systems. And as the slide says there, why is mental health so important to me? Because I understand it, having been a professional ballet dancer. I experienced a significant injury that took me out for about 3 months where I couldn't do any dancing at all. I suffered a lot in terms of my self-esteem, my confidence, body image issues because I couldn't train in the same way. And at the time too, within Australia in the early 90s, in the performing arts sector, similar to sport, there wasn't really an overt presence of psychology or support for mental health issues. And particularly not in terms of people that understood the performance context in that way. And that's what inspired me at that time to say, when I stopped dancing, where did I want to head? What direction did I want to head into sport and exercise psychology. What we also know that actually Craig has quoted this study, which was done by Purcell and linked to the Australian Institute of Sport, is that we know that looking at mental health in sport, that the impact in terms of our elite sports people, as it identifies, they are more likely to report high to very high distress with regards to their mental health in terms of doing what they do in their sporting environment. They're more likely to report symptoms of depression and anxiety. And interestingly enough, what that research actually found, though, is that they did actually score higher than the general population in life satisfaction and confidence about themselves. But if we think about the context that they're generally doing something that they really love to do, although that can wane at times. But these aren't surprising and are similar to what's been found in terms of the professional codes. So, you know, the stats are pretty similar across those areas. So we've heard a little bit about the sporting context and why, what's different about or unique about that type of environment and how does it impact upon, the athletes as well as coaches and support staff. So while some of the focus in what I'm talking about today is athletes or players, let's not forget that those pressures of people working in those high performance environments, we're all people and we experience those challenges. So I know that they are high pressure environments and the expectations, both of themselves, the people that they actually are playing for, performing with, as well as the general public can put an enormous amount of additional pressure, and it brings with it, as Peter Dutton mentioned this morning, that public scrutiny, the public, expectations and the expression of that now through social media is a whole nother area that, as a sports psychologist and supporting people, we're needing to actually address. I remember being at the Vancouver Winter Olympic Games in 2010, and one of my athletes, we had to talk and set some boundaries around the use of obviously social media and phones, and having times where they were switched off for days on end, because people like the second grade teacher of the athlete reached out, who she hadn't seen since primary school, and actually said, "Hey, go for gold," which was exactly what she didn't need to hear at the time, even though the intent was really helpful. So even those kind of aspects of the additional pressures can have a significant impact. We've heard a bit in terms of the heavy training, competition and touring schedules, that can be significantly relentless. Not much downtime, particularly depending upon the type of sport that you're involved with. You can spend 6 months of the year or more away. Think about cricket, think about a lot of the winter sports that I worked with. They have to go to the northern hemisphere to compete, so they pretty much don't have a summer in Australia for can be sometimes up to 10 years on end. Obviously, dealing with injury and illness when you're in a profession that relies upon your body to execute what it is that you're doing to perform, and you're not able to do that anymore. The impact, whether that's forced choice or actually even making a decision to leave your sporting career and look at what next, then that career transition is another area that can have significant impact. I've even seen it within what we talk about as the post-Olympic blues, where you're at the games, you've competed, you've probably worked maybe 4 years, 8 years, sometimes 3 cycles to get to an Olympics, a long period of time. You do your event and it's like, oh, is that it now? And literally the mood flattens out, and people have a significant challenging time dealing with that, particularly when they return to kind of normal life again after that kind of heightened experience. And the impacts, of course, on personal life, on our families, on our friends, on the lack of time sometimes, the prioritisation that we're needing to make in investing in sport, at the detriment sometimes to some of those personal relationships, and that can have a huge impact upon our mental health and well-being. I remember being on a plane going to Poland with worked with short track speed skating, after Stephen Bradbury won his gold, and one of the athletes, his girlfriend had just broken up with him, and he was bawling his eyes out on the plane all the way over to Poland, and yet he had to get it together in terms of being able to perform at the World Championships. So when we think about mental health issues within sport, as I've listed there, some of the key things that actually the International Olympic Committee has identified in their consensus statement in research that they've done, everything from anxiety to stress, depression, self-esteem, eating disorders or disordered eating. There's a difference between those two. Looking at overtraining, burnout, sleep disorders. So we heard from Kate how important sleep is. It's critical for our mental health and well-being. Personality disorders, sexuality and gender issues, similarly what Craig flagged in terms of, the challenges for different parts of our community to be open and be themselves, right through to a range of different types of disorders or maladaptive coping behaviours, like the use or misuse of alcohol, drugs and gambling. So looking at that sporting context and the potential impacts of why, from an athlete perspective, I'm needing to perform to the best of my ability, but there's a range of things that can impact or make that quite difficult for me. So in terms of a little bit of myth busting, as I like to say, athletes are people too. We might kind of think that, wow, they're superhuman and wow, they're doing something different, so that can't impact upon them. Mental health? No, wait, yes it can. Because as I say there, you can't separate your sporting performance from yourself as a person. And that's where I've seen sometimes in terms of approaching mental health that can become a bit of a challenge, where we're looking at actually mental health, mental fitness, as Kate was talking about, is critical for performance in that way. And so separating that out too is not as helpful. And at the end of the day, what we're dealing with is people's brains. And we hope that everybody has one, so that we're actually, again, we're people. This is a people issue. We've heard a little bit about mental health in sport has been unaddressed for a long time. So what I would say to that is that, well, actually targeted psychological support has actually been happening in sport since the 1980s, but at a very individual level. And as Craig mentioned, you didn't hear about it. No one spoke about it. It wasn't done at an organisational or a system level, so that's why it wasn't as open. And certainly as a sports psychologist, even coming through for me in the last 20 years and the difference around the recognition that psychology now is so critical, yet we're always the last person on the bus because the physios and the physical aspect of things was way more important than the psychology. It's great to see that that's actually switching around now, and symposiums like this, are really assist in raising that awareness even further. That there's recent outbreaks, so I think this is something we talk about within the industry a lot. Is it that there's actually more cases? Is it increased prevalence? Or it's just that those wonderful leaders, as Craig talked about, role models are actually breaking the taboos of being vulnerable and speaking about it? Are we just hearing about it more? Which I think is wonderful, and it's great that we are, because it makes it okay for others. And I think that's probably the one, if we can say, one positive out of coming through a pandemic is the recognition of how important mental health is for people in general. And now we're just looking at how is it relevant to different populations that we're working with. So as I mentioned, increasing health and well-being, dealing with that mental fitness is so critical in terms of performance. They're linked together. We can't perform well, we can't exceed in what we do, even as non-sporting people, if we're not mentally fit and physically fit also. So the World Health Organization actually defines looking at mental health, it's not the absence of disease or infirmity, it's actually thinking about holistically around ourselves in terms of our physical, emotional and social well-being. So in working with, athletes and people within elite sport, it's about considering all those things, all those facets, that it's not just mental side, your physical components, it's your relationships at home, it's your financial aspects of managing your life in that way as well. And certainly there's been definitions about mental health in terms of athletes specifically around that it's a state of successful performance or mental function resulting in productive activities, fulfilling relationships with other people and the ability to adapt to change and cope with adversity. That's the mental fitness and mental well-being side that we're actually striving for. So from a psychological perspective, we look at, I've just put up this is a definition of performance psychology that the American Psychological Association developed a while ago and highlighted some areas that, again, what we're looking at is that thriving component. So similar to what Kate was identifying, what we're trying to support people to do is how do they understand their brains and how that can assist them to be the best that they can be in the most, healthy and fit manner mentally and physically as well. And that enhancing health and well-being, with performance, that within, professional codes and elite sporting situations, athletes, have access to a whole range of sports medicine and science support, but mental health issues still occur. Why? Why is that? What I'm going to talk briefly about is that actually what my observations or learnings have been is again, as Kate mentioned earlier, it's all down to our own mindsets. It's about how we're programming this thing and whether we're programming it in helpful or hindering ways. And that actually we can have knowledge, we can know what way we should be moving forward with what skills we might need to use. But when we talk about mental health, sometimes we're not actually able to support ourselves to go in that direction. And that's why when we think about what gets actually in the way, often we get in our own way. So at an individual level, sometimes we, it's a lovely, video of the chat with the artist, talking about how his experiences and he just needed something to kind of assist or prompt him to lift out of that. And sometimes we do need as individuals that external type of support to help change that thinking in our brain to spin in a positive cycle way rather than maybe get caught in the habits of thinking that might have led to us experience mental health. At a systems level, so I think this is where what's wonderful to see, and that's where I think that kind of we don't feel that mental health has been as addressed as it is more recently, is because now we're actually hearing about it and organisations have it on their agendas. There are mental health strategies, there are programs about it. There are whole divisions now. So as Craig mentioned, the Australian Institute of Sport, whilst it's always had performance psychology and athlete kind of well-being, it has a whole health and well-being focus now with a whole strategy around that. And that's critical that organisations across the board and in different sporting codes and different levels are recognising that need to address it at a systems perspective. Because we can do as much individual work as we possibly can at individual athletes, we can work with coaches even, but if the system and the culture around that is not actually, one, acknowledging that there actually are mental health issues for individuals, then that person moving forward to try and operate or perform in that environment is going to be even harder than it is to start with. So at that system level, those organisational structures, funding and support or the lack of it. So again too, there's a big difference between potential professional codes that might have a lot more money than even some of the Olympic sports, or even if we talk about sporting clubs and organisations, that there's recognition that psychology and mental health are critical, but we don't have the funds to be able to support initiatives. So that's where looking at a range of community organisations, which I'll talk about in a second, are critical in terms of how we, one, getting information out there to support people where they might not be able to be supported, by their club or association or their team in that way. That the competing priorities, so again, what I've seen over time in the last 20 years in organisations is that competing priorities of performance over wellbeing, or when I've worked in corporate sector, it's productivity over safety. It's the same thing. We're actually trying to push for performance at all costs versus understanding that actually if you get this stuff right and you support that, development of that, you're going to perform even better. And how do we set the organisation up in a way, and how do we set those strategies and implement them so it is okay to have those discussions and encourage people to address mental health issues. There's also obviously the lack of understanding from others, including management, coaches, team members. Even though we're talking about it more broadly as a society, which is fantastic and have for a number of years, there is still, a hesitation, or I think what I put up there is there's fear for people about either talking about it or sometimes understanding it if they haven't really experienced it themselves or they haven't come across others that have also. So what's your or our responsibility? That understanding, this for anybody that knows me, I think I go on about this concept of locus of control all the time. Effectively what it's saying is that how do I recognise that I'm responsible for my life? I'm responsible for my thoughts, feelings, words and actions. That if I don't get a result that's necessarily what I want, what was my portion of responsibility in that? Sometimes it might not be anything to do with me, but if I'm asking that question and having that understanding of what can I do about that, and sometimes that's recognising I might need somebody else to assist me with that. So understanding what you can actually control and influence in that way. So what can we do better at both the individual, the team and the organisation and community level? So not just awareness with regards to mental health, but how do we support people? How do we make it okay? How do we make it a priority in which to identify what support services are actually available? And where do we understand to be able to get assistance? So we do know more broadly that a fantastic number of groups, including foundations, such as the Mental Health Foundation of Australia. How do we access that support if it's not something that's identified or individually available, in my sporting community, at my club, in my organisation? At least I'm empowered, hopefully, to be able to go, you know what, I can go somewhere to find out who I need to talk to, and that's really critical in terms of raising the awareness of how do we search for that mental health support in that way. So in keeping it to time, it's a huge issue, it's a really important issue. For me, the challenge is always around how do we keep role modelling the way in which we actually want to support others? How do we keep having these conversations and discussions? How do we ask the questions and make ourselves and others accountable for recognising that we all have the ability to experience mental health challenges, and most of us actually have if we're looking at the stats. So how do we support advancing those conversations and initiatives and actually throwing our weight behind it, just like we have today in terms of our symposium? So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much, Professor Jean Morrell. And I would like to invite Mrs. Curly Dutton to present the engraved pen as a gesture of appreciation. Now, we've talked a lot about mental fitness. Now it's time for us to delve into a bit of physical fitness and self-defense. So I'd like to invite Ms. Prakriti Mysore Gururaj to introduce Rami Thunders on stage.
I hope you all are enjoying the event today, and it's been so much of a learning and an eye-opener. As Ravi rightly said, it's mental health just doesn't belong to the brain, it also the physical aspect. And this today, it's my pleasure to introduce Rami Thunder, more so because myself and my son Pratham, who is a youth ambassador as well, are students of Rami for boxing, and shortly will be, taking part with a lot of his other things. Well, to introduce Rami, Rami Fries is the owner and the head coach of Rami's Thunder Martial Arts Academy. Rami started his journey of martial art at the age of 2 and became international medals at the age of 10. A Queensland champion for many years, represented Australia in Olympics 2008. Rami's Thunder started as a community service, teaching kids and adults across all ages, including students with disabilities in 2002. The Academy have produced so many local, state, interstate, national and international champions over the years. In 2012 was their first appearance at the 9th World Junior Taekwondo Championship. Recent results in 2019 included 2 international medals for Australia at the Australian Open and Oceania President Cup. Rami's Thunder is now run by Rami and his wife Malak. My pleasure to introduce this inspirational lady. A black belt 3rd Dan in Taekwondo, and she can teach the art of Muay Thai and self-defense. She has been doing martial art for almost 15 years now and currently a coach at the Academy. So ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Rami's Thunder on this stage.
I don't need the mic, so I will speak. Is that right? Yeah. Okay, I just want to clarify one thing. I did not go to the Olympics 2008, but I lost the selection by half a point, so I was really down there. I played with a hamstring injury. Thank you. Yeah. So I just played with a hamstring injury, and I couldn't make the team just short by half a point. So just for the record, I don't want to take somebody else's record. Right, but I'm sure somebody else went up there and made us proud, so that was great. Right, with no further ado, this is Sir Arwin, one of my students, and we're just going to start with some kicking and one of the sport we do, Taekwondo, and then I will do a kick and show you one basic kick, how the old master can do it, and then Coach Malakshi will do a self-defense move. And then after that, we appreciate if you want to join us. We do some basic moves. That would be great just to have a bit of fun. Thank you. So what we're going to do, please mind if you're wearing high heels, just you don't have to jump. And if you want to step just next to your chair so you have more room, please, that would be great. Thank you. All right, what we're going to do, we're just going to warm up slowly. So we're going to just jump in the bed just to get the blood flow. Gentle move my hand forward and backwards. That's great. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We're going to stand in fighting stance, and we're going to throw this jab. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Cross. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. Beautiful. You're black belt all now. So what we're going to do after that, we're just going to call coach upon Coach Malak. And in my academy, we believe probably the first, the first line of self-defense is your voice. If you can use your voice effectively, you can be safe, right? So Coach Malak, she's, by the way, grown and born in the US. She's been in Australia for 8 years now. So you're loving it. But maybe not me because of black eyes. Right, so what we're going to do, so she's going to stand up and she's going to show you how to demonstrate it. So you're going to put your right leg behind you and you're going to put your hand in natural position that way. Okay, so you're not the aggressor, so you don't make a fist. So you just open hand like that. And you're going to start using your voice. So she's going to try to show you how to use her voice. So she's going to stand straight. So I'm going to come at her, and she's going to do the same stance, but using her voice effectively. Ready? Go. Back up, leave me alone. So simple as that. So when you use those voice actually, it's like a punch or smack to the face, like just go away, leave me alone, right? And this is really effective. It works all the time, especially with me at home. Right. So what are we going to do? So we're going to try it yourself. So we're going to stand all like that. And so you're going to face you, I'm going to face like you, so we can do it together. And we're just going to go back, leg, hands up straight, front of my face, and I'm just going to say, back off. Can we do that? Let's try. 1, 2, 3, go. Back off. Wow. One more time. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, go. Back off. I'm going to face you now. I can't see you. You guys are doing great. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, go. Back off. Wow. I'm loving it. I think, where's my student? Come take a photo from here, man. Look at this beautiful crowd. I'm going to be out of business with no time. Right, let's see. You guys ready? 1, 2, 3, go. Back off. We can do one more and last one. Ready? 1, 2, 3, go. Back off. Okay. Now, sometimes people don't listen. So they come, and you tell them, back off. Yep. Back off. And they don't want to listen. So they start coming, and naturally they're going to grab the first arm because it's closer to them. So as they're grabbing the first arm, they push the arm, and then as they're coming, is a palm strike this way. This is how it looks. Right? Right. Looks fun to her, but not to me. Right? We're going to do it one more time. So I'm going to come, and go bang. Back up, leave me alone. And I'm going to just come this way, and then strike. Right? So you're not going to strike me. That's a good thing. But you're going to do, you're going to step back, you're going to block, and you're going to do the strike on that. Let's try to do it. Let's do just the block without the back off anything. So back, block, and strike. Beautiful. One more. Back, block, and strike. Let's do it with the back off. So I'm going to try to attack you. I'm going to come like that, pretend I'm going like this. Let's see how it goes. 1, 2, 3, go. Back up. Nice. I'm going to try the grab. So you block and strike with the palm to the chin. That's it. One more time. Let's see. Bang. Grabbing, strike. Beautiful. I'm going to do it with you. I love it. One more time and we finish here. Ready? Loud, nice voice. Go. Back up. block, strike. Now, can you do one more favor for me before we finish? The strike with the key up. Pa! Let's see. Key up is whatever I said. Yeah, you ready? Let's see. Stand straight. Back. Back up. Block, strike. Pa! One more. Nice. Last one. You ready? Okay. Bang. Bang. Block. Bang. That's it. You guys are amazing. Well done. Thank you very much. Thank you. Really appreciate it. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it. Okay, I would like also to thank everybody who has given me the opportunity to be with you here in a fantastic event. Thank you very much for everyone. Thank you.
Had to take my jacket off for the self-defense and trying to put them back in. I was, yeah. Thank you so much, Rami Thunder, for that session. That definitely elevated the mood for today. Next up, we have another address by Mr. Andrew Crowell. It's a recorded address. Andrew Crowell has spent over 18 years in the AFL industry after being drafted by the Adelaide Crows in the year 2000. After 4 years and 44 games as a senior player, Andrew continued his employment at the Crows by taking on roles in the junior development and sponsorship departments, as well as on-ground announcer for Adelaide home games. In 2015, Andrew was employed as the regional manager at the AFL Players Association, managing Essendon, Adelaide, Port Adelaide, Fremantle and West Coast Eagles. After 9 months at the AFLPA, Andrew was approached by the Brisbane Lions and offered the role as Personal Excellence and Wellbeing Manager at the Brisbane Lions Football Club. Andrew is a former lead singer and guitarist in a successful cover band, a try-hard golfer, and is passionate about mental health and assisting people with their development. Let's watch the recorded message from Mr. Andrew Crowell.
Hi everybody, my name's Andrew Crowell. I'm the Personal Excellence and Wellbeing Manager at the Brisbane Lions Football Club. Unfortunately, I couldn't be there today. I would have loved to have come along, but fortunately, the reason I can't come is because I'm still in the AFL bubble, because the Brisbane Lions are still playing finals footy. So we've got a big game this weekend against the Geelong Cats, and hopefully we can get over the line there and play off in a grand final the following weekend. So there's not much I'm allowed to do being in the AFL bubble, but I thought it was really important to still send a message down because mental health is something that I'm really passionate about, and it's also something that we're really passionate about here at the Brisbane Lions Footy Club. So firstly, a little bit about my department, which is the Personal Excellence and Wellbeing Department. What we do is we look after everything the players are doing away from football. So that might be what they're doing from an education, training and employment point of view, what they're doing in the community, and what hobbies they have away from football as well. It's really important that our players live balanced lifestyles, and there's a number of reasons for that. We want our players to not stress about football when they're not here at the footy club. So if it's a player's day off, we don't expect them to be here at the football club. We want them away, and we want them focusing on something else. We want them focusing on their study or their work experience, or going out to the community, or might be a hobby that they're doing. What that does is when they come back to the football club, they're fresh, their mind's fresh, and they're ready to go with their football. It also sets them up really well for life after football as well, having that balance and creating connections away from the football club. So that's a really important part, is to make sure that our players have that real balanced lifestyle. As I said earlier, it's an area at the football club that is highly valued, is the Personal Excellence and Wellbeing Department. Our General Manager describes the meeting that he has with myself and our department as his most important meeting of the week. Why is that? It's because we're talking about the care that we're showing our people. We want our players to be looked after. We want to set up an environment where they feel safe. So we're talking through each of our players. We're talking through how the general feel of the place is at the moment and any issues that might be arising. We talk through any issues that players may have, and we try to be really proactive with how we approach that and come up with some solutions on how we can help our players with those sort of battles that they might be facing. And that's not just our general manager, it's all of our staff. As I said before, it's an area that we are really focused on. All of our staff and our players have been through mental health first aid training, and there's a number of reasons we do that. We want our players to have that safe environment as well as our staff. We want everyone at our football club looking after each other. So if there is a player or a staff member that might be struggling, we want our people at our football club to have the skills to know what to do. We want them to be able to recognise when there might be a person struggling. We want them to know where to go when they've picked something up, and we want them to know how to talk to that person. So every person at the football club, as I said before, has been through a program that helps them with those skills, and so that it is a really safe environment for our players. There's some other areas that we really focus on with our players as well, and one of them is something that everyone can do, and that is exercise. Exercise is crucial when it comes to mental health. If we have any players that may be presenting with any mental health issues, the last thing we do is send them home to be by themselves. We want them here at the football club, we want them training, we want them getting out there and exercising. It increases your self-esteem, it reduces stress and anxiety, it helps with focus. So generally, if we have a player that presents with some issues, getting them out on the track and training with their teammates helps. It's the first point of call to get them out and to get them moving. And generally when they come off the training track, there's an improvement from most players. The other aspect we look at is that teamwork. Coming into an environment where you're part of a community is really important. So, having our players being good mates that look after each other is super crucial to our players' mental health. My job's got easier because our players have got better at looking after each other, and that's just having an education on how to do that and actually having genuine care. So again, as I said before, when a player is feeling flat, the last thing we do is send them away. We get them here to the club where they've got people around them to help them and to care for them. In saying all of this, it does take a level of importance on the person who is struggling as well to speak up. And that's what I said before around that safe environment, is we want players to feel really safe to speak up if they're battling. I personally went through some issues when I was playing AFL football, and I didn't speak up. I had a great friend at the time who noticed that I was flat and made me speak up to the doctor, and it made me feel immediately better. So that's really important now, is that we've got that safe environment. We've got a number of different avenues. It's not just a doctor. It can be a teammate, it can be a friend, it can be a family member, or a coach, whoever. But having someone to talk to and just tell them that you're battling is the first step in getting better. So again, I would have loved to have been there to help and to talk and to share my experiences, but unfortunately I couldn't be there. But to sort of summarise what I've talked about, it's the importance of having balance in your lifestyle. It's important of exercising and being part of a team or a community. So if you get the chance to join a team, or if you're thinking about going for a run or playing some sort of sport, then get out there and do it. The last thing if you are feeling flat, speak up. It's a weight off your shoulders, and it's the first step in starting to feel better. So thanks again for having me. Again, I apologise for not being able to make it. The last thing I will say though is go the Lions. Hopefully we can get the win over the weekend over the Geelong Cats and get into our grand final. Thanks again. Go Lions.
Thank you so much, Mr. Crowell, if you're watching this live. And as a gesture of appreciation, an engraved pen will also be posted to you. And I'm from the Gold Coast, so go the Suns. Next up is our panel discussion, and I'd like to invite the Vice Chair, Mr. Jim Gooding, to initiate the panel members on the stage. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I invite our panellists to take the 4 chairs here? Narasim, you're going to be on the other end of the table this time. Rather than emceeing, you're going to be answering questions. So here you are. Here's a microphone. And perhaps we can share the microphone around. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land upon which we meet today. To pay my respects to the elders such as Auntie Peg, past, present and emerging, and to respect the fact that the land has been occupied for millennia and that it has never been ceded. So I think we've had just about everybody introduce themselves. Fiona, you haven't introduced yourself, so can you just briefly say, yes, your qualifications for being on this expert panel, which you all are?
Yeah, so I'm Rachel Jones. I work as a sports psychologist. I'm currently working with a number of teams, including the Gold Coast Suns, so I'm glad they got a mention, as their sports psychologist with the women's team. I'm currently doing a lot of work in women's sport, including Queensland cricket, where I'm working for Queensland Fire and Brisbane Heat. Also doing some work with the Queensland Academy of Sport, where my role, I go across a couple of different sports, including softball and football, as in the round ball game. And so as part of that role, I've been able to work with Brisbane Roar W League and also some of the pathways with Football Queensland as well. Also been able to be part of the AIS Mental Health Referral Network and one of the providers with the AFL Players Association.
Thank you. Can you hand the microphone to Krishnil?
Hi everyone, my name is Krishnil Maharaj. I'm a performance psychologist and I do a lot of work in Australia but also overseas. So I'm originally from Fiji and I was a performance psychologist for Fiji's Commonwealth Games team on the Gold Coast in 2018. And if Tokyo 2020 had gone ahead, Tokyo 2020, which is now 2021. So that's, I guess, a lot of that work across multiple sports in the Olympic Commonwealth Games sort of teams. Locally in Australia, I do a lot of work with across mostly football because my background is as a footballer and a coach as well. Gone off and done a Masters in Sports Coaching as well, just to kind of enhance, I guess, my experiences and background as a coach. So I've kind of probably got a bit of a unique perspective in that I've kind of been an athlete, performance psychologist, and then worked as a coach as well. So I was on the Football Coaches Australia Wellbeing subcommittee as well, so looking at the wellbeing of football coaches across Australia as well. So that's my background.
And Jean, we've already had you introduce yourself, but if there is anything you wish to add, okay, that's fine. Now, Narasim, what are you doing on this panel? You're both sides of this lect, and this is amazing. Tell us a little bit about what your interests are and why you're on our expert panel.
Right, so actually I just completed my final assignment 2 days ago, and I've graduated of a double bachelor's degree in exercise science and business majoring in sport management at Griffith University. I'm a former semi-professional athlete. I've been trained in table tennis, which I played for over 15 years, and racket sports kind of came along with them, so badminton, squash, tennis, and obviously when you're an athlete you kind of take part in all sports at high school level, so I'm really into sports since a very young age, and and I moved here in 2017 to do my undergraduation, and then I was, I've been very grateful to be awarded the Gold Coast 2018 Commonwealth Games Scholarship, which covers 100% of my tuition fee. And yeah, that's a little bit about me, and I am here to talk about my experience being an athlete, having worked with sporting organisations, interning with them, and having done a couple of courses on sports psychology as well. So nowhere near some of our other panellists over here, very, very experienced, and I'm just here to add on my thoughts and experience that I've had as an athlete.
Good, thank you very much. Now, a lot of the issues or questions that I'm going to ask obviously have been addressed to a certain extent in the talks and addresses so far, but it might provide an opportunity to drill down and provide a little bit of greater depth. Now, I'm going to mention some top athletes that have battled mental health issues and made them public recently. We've got athletic star Morgan Mitchell, we've got swimming legend Ian Thorpe, AFL legend Lance Franklin, Wayne Schwass, who in fact founded his own mental health enterprise called Pucker Up, former athletic star Jana Pittman, Olympic swimming legend Libby Trickett, even basketball legend Lauren Jackson, and so it goes on. There seems to be a great number of very high elite athletes that are coming out and acknowledging that they've had mental health problems. I'd like to just throw it open to anyone who'd wish to answer. Why is this increasingly the case? Why are certainly elite athletes more likely to come forward and acknowledge that they are having troubles in coping?
I think a big part of it, and Jean touched on it in her presentation, in terms of the myths around athletes and kind of mental health issues for athletes. A big part of it is it's much more accepted now. A lot more people are willing to talk about it, and I think it just creates a flow-on effect. Then, if one person's able to talk about it, then the next person goes, oh, okay, well, if Ian Thorpe struggled with it and look what he's achieved, maybe it's okay for me to speak up as well. And it creates this flow-on effect. And I think for a lot of athletes as well, it might also be a way to give back as well, to sort of try and normalise mental health and well-being issues in sport as well. So there's that kind of way to give back, to be able to go, okay, well, yes, I had my highs, I had my lows, and some of the lows, maybe if I let other people know, it'll help them as well in their journey as well.
And I was staggered to hear some of the statistics that Professor Jean gave us today, that of a sample of 749 athletes, high to very high psychological distress was experienced by 17.15% versus 9.5% in the general population. That's an incredible statistic. We're talking about elite athletes having almost double the high level of anxiety. What are some of the factors that now cause that in current elite sporting scene, if you like? And I'm talking about media, I'm talking about Facebook, I'm talking about the stresses of being an elite athlete. I'll throw that open again, perhaps to you, Professor. Or no? Fiona?
Yeah, I think there are a number of risk factors. There was also recently an Origin report done across a number of sports, and even within that, they found that female cricketers were at an even higher rate of psychological distress that kind of distinguished out from other sports. So we had identified another issue again, but some of the really significant issues that add to that are financial issues. So a lot of athletes from individual sports, this happens a lot, particularly in Olympic, Paralympic sports, don't have a lot of funding outside of the major sports where we're really successful in Australia. And so as a result, some athletes are working incredibly long hours and still training 20, 30 hours a week. So that's a lot to fit in, especially when you're thinking thinking about the fact that essentially they're doing 2 full-time jobs and having to look after their bodies as well. So it's quite stressful from that perspective. a lot of elite sports in this country are still self-funded, so that's also quite stressful, or partially funded. So to be able to access services, even like psychology support, for example, they have to fund out of their own pockets. Obviously that's assisted by things like Medicare, but still that can be quite challenging, especially if they need ongoing support, although great news is that we now have more Medicare sessions available to us, which is fantastic news. So that's some of the stresses. They're high pressure environments, so it's like, I guess, saying every day, you know, you've got to perform at your job, and if you don't perform today, you might lose your job tomorrow. It's not like you have to perform over the next quarter. You have to perform today, or in this minute, or in this second, or in this moment. You have to be able to perform, and obviously that's quite stressful. So there's a number of different things, and I think one more thing that both Crowley and Jean touched on is the idea of the environment and that systems work. I've been unfortunate enough to come on board in some really toxic environments in high performance sport. Just seeing what's happening at the moment in gymnastics in this country, you know, some of the stories that are coming out following some of the challenges that came out in the US in the last year. And so obviously there's a long way to go with changing some of the environments so they are psychologically safe and people are more likely to put their hands up. There are some really backwards practices in sport that are still quite accepted because there's this false belief that it improves performance.
But elite sport's always been tough. It's always been about pushing yourself to the limit. And yet it was not, as Professor Jean said, until the 1980s that people really began to realise that psychological intervention was so important. What caused the penny to drop all of a sudden? It seems to have dropped all of a sudden. What was the impetus for this?
Well, I think if we're talking about sports psychology, that was probably more like the 1920s when it actually people started to look at the psychological aspects in terms of physical movement. But I think when I talk about the 80s, it was looking at sports psychology as a profession and coming actually from the States. So the States had started a little bit earlier, so actually following through in terms of starting to get training programs even in sports psychology, or even that psychologists would actually be engaged, so there was not actually a sports psychology profession, but a psychologist would be engaged by a sporting team. So I know, you know, back in the 80s, Phil Jauncey was working with the Brisbane Broncos. Not many people might know that that was actually, right back then, he was actually supporting the team in terms of their performance. So I think, you know, with everything in recognition of those areas and how do we get the education and training, how do we get the information out there, how do we then, I think the challenge is also, as I mentioned earlier, competing priorities, and if you've only got a certain amount of funds, it only stretches so far. So then also to that understanding of organisations, what are they prioritising first? It's a physical activity. We need to look after them physically, but that recognition actually, you know, I would argue 99% of it is mental, because how we actually deal with the physical aspects and how we apply ourselves. You could have an Ian Thorpe that swims really well one day and doesn't the next. His physical capabilities and technique hasn't changed in 24 hours, but his mental state might have. So I think it's we're kind of following suit from the States to Australia in that way, and certainly then we're also I look at it from a performance perspective in performing arts. Performing arts is following behind sport. We're slowly getting there in terms of psychology and performing arts, but that's taken a while as well. So I think it's just knowledge, awareness, education, training, acceptance, and the cultural aspect of recognising how important this thing is with regards to our well-being and our performance.
Is it part of the general social increasing awareness of mental health as a vital part of our physical health?
Totally. It's been a critical thing. I think, you know, as was mentioned, the research is starting to provide evidence to say we can actually prescribe exercise with regards to mental health treatment. if we can get it on the schedule, that's going to be, fantastic. So we know what the benefits are. And I think that's those aspects of recognising and, as what was said, how do we normalise it? Most people will experience mental health challenges as human beings. Athletes and coaches and people working in sport are no different. The context might be slightly different and some of the different pressures might be there, but we still experience depression, anxiety, obsessive compulsive disorder, whatever it might be. So I think the conversation, normalising it, hearing the stories, and I agree, the role models, that ability to go and actually want to help. So for me, I know even personally, the idea around going and doing sports psychology was to go back into the ballet world to be able to say, hey, you need to be looking at this. How do we support people through? This was my experience and I don't want somebody else to go through that. And I think that's what's wonderful about people opening it up, normalising it and sharing their stories now.
So how can we keep this progress occurring, this normalisation, increased normalisation, this understanding that mental health issues are common and for everybody, elite athletes included? Whose responsibility is it? Is it the responsibility of organisations, sports management, health professionals, the athletes themselves? Perhaps, Narasim, do you have a view on this?
Sorry, so was that on whose responsibility is it to actually open up and talk about mental health, or to promote it? Sorry, I missed that question. Could you possibly repeat that question for me? Sorry.
Whose responsibility is it to improve mental health? Is it the sporting organisations, managers, the athletes themselves, the leagues, etc.? Where would you put the influence, or sorry, the emphasis in terms of improving mental health awareness training? Is there a strategy that's now accepted for optimising mental health in elite athletes?
Yeah, I think it definitely starts with the athletes themselves first, because they've started opening up recently, and it is a top-down kind of approach. It has to start with sporting organisations. Improved funding, as some of the other panellists mentioned. So it's essentially the government and the sporting organisations that will be highly responsible for making this progress. But it all starts with the athletes as well. The more they open up, because sometimes it can affect their team selections, it can affect their image amongst other peers, other teammates in the team. A lot of the times, factors like that can affect them from opening up. So I think major responsibility does lie with the athletes themselves.
Is there any kind of evidence as to whether team sports or individual sports put greater pressure on individual elite athletes? I'm just thinking of sometimes the team bond that you might get in a football team might be supportive. Then again, it might not. It might be highly critical of the performance of a player who's not fulfilling their role. Or what about the individual performance athlete, like tennis or self-defence, which would provide more pressure, perhaps, and what are the reasons? Anyone care to answer that little mind-boggler?
Yeah, I think it depends on the context. I think you're right that there would be some differences between team sports and individual sports. I think it depends on the context. Obviously, if the team environment is a supportive one, then that could really support good mental health, good well-being. Whereas, as Rachel was touching on, she's been involved in, and there would certainly be environments that are quite toxic. So then, in that case, the team environment might actually be not particularly conducive to good mental health and well-being. So it does depend on kind of the team environment that is created, the organisational environment that is created. But then, if we look at the individual athlete, then yes, certainly there's probably, in some regards, there's a little bit more scrutiny there, because you are, if it's tennis, for example, you are on the court yourself, and the scrutiny is completely on you. There isn't sort of the ability to kind of hide within the team context. So yeah, certainly I think in some regards there's a lot more pressure, a lot more scrutiny for individual athletes, especially when it is a sport like tennis that receives so much publicity, where you are kind of centre court and you might be out there for several hours at a time. every little kind of decision, look at kind of what happened with Djokovic and the incident where he's hit the tennis ball at the ball person. It's every detail is scrutinised. So I think, definitely there's the element of scrutiny for individual athletes. In terms of the team environment, it depends on the context of the team environment, I think.
Now for something completely different, and I'd ask you all to pull out your crystal balls on this one. Athletes have very strict training regimes, as we all know, before major events, but due to the COVID-19 pandemic, athletes have had to adjust to a new reality, as we all have. For example, the Olympic Games has been cancelled for 2020. Those athletes will be preparing for 2021, not knowing really whether that's going to go ahead or not. Are we seeing any increased general signs of anxiety in our elite athletes as a result, particularly those that are candidate Olympians, if you want to put it that way? Any takers on that one?
Look, certainly, I think even just the impact of the Olympics shifting by a year. You've had athletes that have been planning for Tokyo and that was going to be their last games. And they might feel like they're right at that pointy end of their performance and they just timed everything up to be landing straight now, and now they've got another year. Or you've got people that weren't selected for 2020 but have been selected for 2021. I think there's a range of complexities around it, even shifting in terms of that time frame, that impact in preparing for it, or even that I haven't been able to, particularly for those, like in Victoria that are still in lockdown, that might not be able to even do their sport or practice their sport, so they have to train around what it is that they're doing, and feeling like that loss of time in a really, really critical, we look at the quadrennial kind of, everything is timed and planned down to the nth degree, and one kind of shift or change in that could make all the difference. So that worry on the one hand of also too putting off, as Rachel was saying before, athletes that have to work, that have put jobs off or have taken time off, and now they're going like, financially I can't do that any longer, so what position am I in now to continue to train for the Olympics? So I think there's a range of different types of stresses or mental health challenges that can come with even just that shift in a year, let alone not even being able to train correctly or feeling like you're catching up in that way.
Would anyone else like to make a comment about that? Fiona?
Yeah, I'd love to add a couple of things. I think from a professional sporting capacity, there's been a few challenges, and again, it's that variety of experiences. So the WBBL teams are going into a hub as of next week. So we've put additional mental health support around that compared to what would already be there, which there was already some support. Now we have a lot more support, including support in the hub, outside of the hub, everybody's being screened. So we're looking for anything. So essentially there's less risk because there's more support, and some athletes are really benefiting from that who would normally be quite anxious. Also, some are treating it like a holiday. They're actually quite excited, because I was doing a screening with one athlete yesterday, and they said, yep, I'm a professional about to go on a cricket holiday. So it's going to be quite a different, it takes some of the stress off. But then we have other athletes, so like AFLW, for example, the AFL have decided that they're going to restrict teams up here with the same restrictions as players down in Melbourne. So that's quite challenging, especially when there's more restrictions at training than there actually is in their day-to-day life. Especially given that there's a competition that we don't know how it's going to look. We've been assured it is going to go ahead, but we don't know how it's going to look, when it's going to officially start, whether people are going to have to put jobs on hold. And further complexity to what Jean was saying before, some of my softball athletes, I think it's another... I think softball hasn't been in the Olympics for about 12 years. It's back in for Tokyo, and then there's an 8-year gap until it's back in again. So this is kind of a very small window for some of those athletes who are making a comeback just for this opportunity. So It's mixed and complex.
Yes, Narison.
Just to add on to that, and as Jean mentioned already, there is a lot that goes behind in preparing an athlete to peak at the right time. One of the areas that I'm really interested in is strength and conditioning and high performance, where they have a periodization model where volume and intensity and all of that is varied just to peak at the right time. And now they've got to do it all over again. And that's caused a lot of anxiety and stress because athletes are put to strict diets and things like that. And
with the possibility of more injuries, etc.
Absolutely. And in sports like table tennis, where we have a lot of doubles, a lot of combination and teamwork is very important to be able to understand each other. And a lot of the athletes have been stuck in different states and not able to get that team coordination together, which is a big challenge for them when they go out to compete.
All right, now we are running out of time, so I'm going to combine two questions, all right? So it's a bit of a double banger. We're increasingly aware of chronic traumatic encephalopathy, CTE, in contact sports. How concerned should we be about the new research into CTE in retired athletes, given the revelations about the terrible last few years that our football icon Polly Farmer suffered with his dementia? And I want to link that in with the next question of eventually age and injury catches up with all elite athletes who have been adjusting to change and self-perception, closing off of certain social networks, etc. How do our elite athletes fare with the mental challenges of retirement, and are there any strategies in place now to help them through the rest of their lives? Because, of course, our competitive sporting career is only a decade, if we're lucky, maybe a little bit longer, if we're very, very lucky. What is there in place to help after it all ends, after the glory years? Please.
So I'm probably more capable to answer the second half of the question. We do have a lot of systems in place to allow athletes to have a fallback career, especially where I study at Griffith University. We have something called the Griffith Sports College, which takes care of athletes' academics as well as their sporting commitments. So they work out their exam timetabling and all of that just to ensure that they are competing and also completing a degree at the same time, which allows them, so one injury can put you off your career, and that can happen at any time. And so because sport is limited in terms of how long you can compete, it's always important to have these backup courses so that athletes can do them and have a fallback career.
I think it's that's a very important part of it, but I think as well sometimes we don't equip athletes particularly well for everyday life. So they need to be equipped in terms of another career path. What are they going to do after sport? But also sometimes we overlook the basics. Like if we think about some juniors who are going into elite environments at 16, 17, 18. At cricket, we have people in our elite program as young as 15, and so sometimes they're missing school to be at training. So they're strongly encouraged to finish their school certificates, but sometimes it's their parents who put all the eggs in one basket and go, my kid is going to be an elite cricketer or whatever, insert whatever sport. But then we think about that, let's say 15, 16, 17-year-old who comes out at the end of the year. Let's assume that they're really successful, because if you think about the average rugby league career at the NRL level, it's approximately 2 years, which is really quite short if you think about it. But let's say we have an athlete who's quite successful and goes from sort of those late teen years through to their 30s, and then they've set up pretty well, but they've always been in an environment where they've been told where they need to be, when they need to be there, everything's sorted for them, bookings are made for them, they've just told when to show up, and basically they're told what to eat, what to drink, what to wear, all of those things, and then all of a sudden they don't even know how to submit their tax properly, or they don't know how to open a bank account, or they don't know how to book a hotel, like things that we just don't think about. And so we get these really, powerful figures who all of a sudden are like, I don't know how to live life anymore. And so obviously that has a pretty critical influence on their mental health. And so I think, some sports are doing this better than others. There are, like the AFL, for example, the AFL Players Association. If you've been on a team list, you can get support through the AFLPA for life. So it doesn't matter if it's 20 years since you've played or whatever, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, well, I've never accessed support before. I want to access support. You can get that. So there are some sports that are doing that better than others. Some, there's like 2 sessions after you finish. Most athletes kind of pass that up because they're like, well, I'm fine. I'm just kind of enjoying, I'm in the honeymoon period. I don't have to go to training every day. And then it's later down the track that they need that support, but all of a sudden they're not surrounded by that network of resources or that network of people that they're used to.
Would anyone else like to make a comment?
Yeah, I think just want to kind of piggyback off that point. Irrespective of whether an athlete has an extremely successful career, they will spend more time, as a general rule, they will spend more time of their life not being a professional athlete than they will being a professional athlete. If they play, footy till they're 35, they will then still continue to have a life beyond football for much, much longer than they have been a professional athlete. And I think the transition is extremely difficult for a lot of athletes because of that reason, partly because they haven't learnt the skills, just the general basic life skills that we might have, and the kind of ability to kind of manage our own schedules and come up with our own plans for the day and all those types of things. But the other element as well is that depending on the sport, there's a massive adrenaline rush as well. Adrenaline rush in terms of being in the locker room, in the change rooms, going out there, competing, all those sorts of things. And all of a sudden you retire and that attention, the adrenaline rush, all that disappears. So then it becomes, okay, well, how do I feel that? How do I feel that? And there's been examples, for example, with athletes that get into gambling, and losing significant sums of money sometimes because it gives them a rush. And so this idea of kind of transitioning, I think, is one that is a challenge. And it's, like Rachel's saying, some sports and some organisations are doing it much, much better than others. But I think it is a continued challenge. A big part of it is probably education in terms of trying to educate athletes, parents, families, sporting clubs from an earlier and earlier stage. So I think has to be a big part of it in terms of, hey, look, you are, as an athlete, you are only going to be an athlete for X number of years. What happens if you get injured? What happens post your sporting career, etc.? What else are you going to do? What else gives you a rush? What else are you interested in? What other identity do you have beyond being an athlete? Because you are not going to be a professional athlete for the rest of your life. And I think one of the things that COVID has done is that it's actually allowed athletes to experience retirement. It's sort of like, well, this is your retirement, this is your retired life. There is no profession, for some sports, at least temporarily, there is no professional sport. What's your life like? Is it empty? In that case, that's a massive red flag, alarm bells. You've still got time, go and do something about it.
Professor Jean, did you have some final comments?
So I think on the kind of career transition, the self-identity, that's the key thing. So how are we supporting, because specialisation in sport is starting earlier and earlier, it's not necessarily a helpful thing, both from a physical perspective, we're seeing that from the kind of physiology coming through and heightened injuries, but also the lack of experience of different things in life as well. So we know that actually to perform really well, we need that balance. That's talked about. So that ability to identify that I'm not, in my case, Jean the dancer, I'm Jean who dances. And there's a very, very distinct difference. And how do we support that development from young ages right through to know that you have other interests and you might be really great at this and you're passionate about it, but you're more than that. So I think there's that component, and I agree it depends upon the funding of the organisation, of how much support that they can do kind of post-career, but there's lots and lots more research and discussions about career transition in that way, and the differences of what we can do early to prevent that kind of crash point in that way. And briefly to your first kind of part of the question, I think we're exploring, with the new science and data and technology, we're able to understand more about the impacts of sport on our bodies, and particularly in this case, our brains. So working in Winter Olympics sliding sports, it's coming out more and more now in terms of skeletons head first down a track, luges feet first, and then bobsleigh, most people know, is the shaking of the brain in terms of the gravity. So we're just starting to kind of deal with that within those areas now and understand what are the implications of that, which can be quite scary alongside what we've seen kind of in football and contact sports. So it's a still wait and see. We're catching up with how do we actually deal with those issues and the implications on our health for later in life.
Thank you so much. I'd like to thank our expert panel. Can you please put your hands together? I'd like to say that we should be able to bottle, for any aspiring athletes out there, bottle the information, bottle the knowledge from these people and take twice daily after breakfast and before bed. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jim Goodin, for that lovely panel discussion. I'm sure we have a lot more questions. If you're watching this live, make sure you put it through on the comments as well. And can I now please invite Mr. Jim to present a few of the engraved pens to our panelists who haven't already received them. The rest are on the line. Apologies for that. All right, next up we have a mental stillness, stress management segment. And it's now time to invite Megha Mala Basu. So Megha is a successful senior spatial science officer, geospatial technologist working with the Department of Transport and Main Roads Engineering and Technology branch. In the capacity of a mental stillness practitioner, Megha has been facilitating free mental stillness and wellbeing programs across southeast Queensland. Thousands of people from diverse social, cultural, economic and professional backgrounds have benefited from these programs, achieving inner peace and balance, improving well-being and quality of life. From March 2020, she has been facilitating mental stillness programs on virtual platforms with a team of dedicated volunteers. On Australia Day 2020, Megha received Dixon Community Service Award in recognition of her service to the region's vibrant multicultural community over the past 13 years, promoting diversity, inclusion, and helping community members in achieving inner peace and balance, thereby improving well-being and quality of life. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Megha on stage for a mental stillness and stress management session.
Good afternoon, everyone. I won't take too much time because I don't want to stand between you and your lunch. I know we are running late, but I'll try to keep it short and brief. As Ravi mentioned, I've been practicing this mental stillness for over 22, 23 years now myself, and I've been running this program at Brisbane City Council Library for past 10 years or more, and around Moreton Bay regional areas. So if I can have my slides, please. Okay. No, that's fine. Okay. So How many times have you been caught up, missed your sleep, or you can't get to sleep because you have this steady stream of thoughts that is incessantly running in through your minds? Or you have walked into a room and then you forgot what you were there for in the first place because your mind is occupied with some other thoughts that are either related to past, which you have no control over because it's already gone, or your mind is thinking something about the future. And as I was listening to all this, the panel discussions and things, I was thinking, like, in the world of sports, how you are put into that high performance pressure zone where you are planning all the time to the nth degree. And your mind is actually always planning for the future. You are not in this present moment at all, and you are losing this precious moment. And the classic example is all this planning towards this Tokyo 2020 has now been cancelled because there's something happened which is beyond our control. So the point is, we can plan for future no matter what. We have to do that, obviously, but we can't dedicate our lives to either planning for the future, which we don't have control over, or we can think about the past, which is already gone and I can't change it because I've already done it. So the key is to pause for a moment and tap into that present moment. So the slide here is actually so see how the graph at the top, it's the sinusoidal curve. That's how our thought process works. So there is a thought, and then we start reacting to the thought, and then that rises. And there is a moment where you are either elated because it's a happy thought and you are at the top, and then it dies down, and then another thought rises, and then it could go to the bottom, and you can even get into depression because if it is a sad thought from the past, or you're self-pitying yourself and I can't do this and everyone else can do this, and because of the social media, everyone else can do everything and I can't do anything. Oh my God, what? So anyway, so that's how our thought process works. But there is a very tiny little gap between the two thoughts, and we are unable to tap it in between those two thoughts. So what I'm going to do next is just going to do some practical breathing exercises and, calming ourselves down so we can actually tap into that gap. So there is a very common phrase we see on the trains and public transport, mind the gap. So that's what exactly we are doing, minding that gap, but between your thoughts. So being mindful about the thoughts that are running through your minds, whether it's past or present, you observe the thought, but you don't react to the thought. So I like your comment there, Dr. Chin, that, I'm not the dancer, but I dance. So there's a significant difference between I'm a dancer because then I'm in the public figure, I have to perform, but I dance because I love to dance. And I myself as a dancer too, so I know the difference, exactly what it is. So, and the second slide there, which is what we'll try to achieve in a moment. So that's how your thought rises, but then if we can tap into the gap between those two thoughts, then we are able to at least calm our minds down for a few seconds. And even if it's for a few seconds to begin with, and then if we practice that, every day, say morning 5 minutes, more evening after, before going to bed, that really calms our mind down, and then we are able to focus more on the present rather than thinking about the past or about the future. So I'll just get you to sit, relax, put your phones down, take your glasses off, and really calm yourself down. And if you can, please close your eyes. I probably will have 2 hand movements. So before we close our eyes, I'll just show. So one, we will just put our hand on a spirit or on a heart, and then the second hand movement will be just taking some energy from the bottom of your spine and just put it on top of your head. So that's about it. But everything else, you can just follow my voice. So if you can just please close your eyes. And we'll just begin by putting both our hands out on our lap with palm facing upwards. And we'll just recognize the fact that there is an inner self within us, which is not this body or this mind or the identity that the world knows about us, and we are trying to connect to that inner self. And we'll just take some few deep breaths. So we will breathe in. Really hold it there, and then slowly breathe out. And while doing this, we will just watch our thoughts. We will not react to them at all. We'll just let them come and go, as if you're watching the waves standing on the shores. Let the waves of thoughts pass by, and you detach yourself from those thoughts. Now we will put our right hand onto our heart towards the left side, and this is where our spirit resides. So no matter where we come from, what our background is, we all have a spirit within ourselves. And we'll just say, please let me connect to my inner self. Please let me connect to my spirit. You can even affirm within yourself that I'm not this body, I'm not this mind, but I'm the pure spirit. And this is very important, because once you become the spirit, you can identify yourself as being the spirit. You can actually detach yourself from all these worldly problems. And once you go beyond that mind, beyond that problem, then you will find it is very easy to solve those problems. As long as you can detach, as soon as you can detach yourself, you can get a broader perspective of the problem, and then you can solve it much quicker than you think. So you just say, Mother, I'm not this body, I'm not this mind, but I'm the pure spirit. And then we'll take some energy. So I'll just briefly mention, because we all do have energy within ourselves, and that energy is waiting to be connected to this all-pervading energy which is all around us. So we'll just take some energy from the base of our spine, and then, like I showed, just slowly take it and put it on top of your head. You don't have to touch anything, just slow hand movements. And that helps you to connect to this all-pervading energy which is all around us. And bring your right hand back onto your lap again. And try to help with your attention or awareness, just take it on top of your head. Just see if you can hold your awareness there. And we'll just listen to the music with the awareness on top of our head. Keep both your hands out on your lap. And if you're still getting any thoughts, just say, I don't want to react to this. Just let them go. Please take this time to connect to your inner being. This is the time to introspect who you really are, what you really want. And please appreciate that you are really unique and amazing. Whatever you are doing is really amazing. And the things that you can't do probably are beyond your control. And you can slowly open your eyes when you're ready. Or if you wish to continue to be in this mental silence for a few more minutes, we can. It is also a very good idea to find some quiet corner in your home in the morning or in the evening before going to bed, and if you can try and quieten your mind, you can use similar music if you wish. If that helps, that definitely helps to quieten the mind to begin with, but then as more advanced practitioner, we sometimes don't use the music and just be able to meditate or go into that silence. You can practice that anytime during the day, even if you are at work or something happens and you're really anxious or nervous, you can just take time off and practice this. And that's all. If you have any questions, I'll be around. I think around lunchtime you can come and ask me. Otherwise, I hope this gives you some insight on how you can actually include this mental stillness practice, or how you can manage your stress and mental and still achieve that mental well-being, which is now a very commonly talked about issue, I think, which is great, because in my workplace, even a few years ago, that was still a stigma, like we couldn't talk about mental health and anything. So that's really great to see that people are starting to talk about this. And this is a great tool I think people can use to help their mind calm down. So that's all. Thank you, MHFA, for giving me the opportunity to come and share this with you all. And they're doing a wonderful job, I think, in the mental health side of things and promoting awareness. I think they do have a walk on Sunday, so if you're free, just join them. And yeah, thank you. Thank you all for joining us, and also to those who have joined us online. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Mega. It was amazing. I legit went into a power nap there and feeling a lot more fresh now. Thank you so much for that. It's a great tool that I'll definitely use in the future. Next up, we have our award presentations. So could I please invite Mr. Jim Goodin, the Vice Chairperson of MHFA, to announce and congratulate the winners of the Australian Young Writers Creative Writing Competition, and Ms. Curly Dutton to present the awards as well.
Thank you very much. This really is an extraordinarily important part of the day because we run a creative writing competition with the Mental Health Foundation. We've done this since 1992. This year it's gone national, so in all states and territories we've had winners, and I'm happy to announce the two winners here today from Queensland. Could I have Freya Anderson come to the stage, please, to collect her trophy? Give Freya a big hand of applause. And I'll call upon Kirralie Dutton to present that award to Freya. Freya is from Kelvin Grove State College. Her teacher is Miss Searle, and I think Miss Searle must be very proud of you, Freya, for what you've done. And you did an excellent piece of prose called Beautiful, which was in fact beautiful, so the name was very appropriate. Thank you. Can we give her another round of applause? Please stay there because we're going to get some photos taken of you. And our next winner is Antonia, or I think you like to be called Tia, isn't it? So we'll say Tia Goodrick, who won the lower secondary prize. Tia, can you come to the front, please, and receive your award? Now, Tia is from St Benedict's College. And her teacher is Miss Cecil, is that correct? And I bet she's very proud of you too. What are they going to do for you at the school? Are they going to display you at the assembly? Well, we better ring them and make sure they do, I can tell you. And your piece of writing was called Spaghetti, and I did like one particular aspect of it where she wrote that she writes poetry to calm and soothe her mind. So how good is that as a mental health strategy for removing stress and relieving stress? Could we give her a great round of applause too? Both our wonderful winners from the essay competition. Perhaps Kirralie, if you'd like to stand next to her. Have all parents done their thing with the camera? Yes, Mum, you have? Good, all right. I'll stand aside, thank you, and welcome our MC back. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jim and Ms. Curly Dutton, and congratulations to all the winners. Next up, we have an address by the chair of MHFA Queensland Ambassadors Program. Dr. Ram is among those Indians in Australia who have not only excelled in diverse fields, but even made their mark in serving those in need. He has been instrumental in inspiring many youngsters to excel in fields such as education, sports, and community work. In his illustrious career, he has served as the president of the Indian Cultural Society in Darwin. He has been the Vice President of the Tamil Association of Queensland and has also served as the President and Vice President roles in the Federation of Indian Communities of Queensland, FICQ. Currently, he is serving as the advisor to FICQ. He is also running the community newspaper for Indian community, India News and India News Queensland, successfully with the view to bringing together the Indians living in Australia. He is currently the chair of Queensland Multicultural Ambassadors Program, MHFA. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Dr. Ram Mohan on stage.
Thank you, Narasimhan. Distinguished guests, community leaders, my fellow multicultural ambassadors, panelists and speakers, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon to everyone. I know that's been warned that lunchtime now. I'll be short as well. Thank you, Auntie Peggy, for your wonderful acknowledgement to country. Before I begin, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land where we meet upon today. I pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. My name is Ram Mohan, Chair of the Queensland Multicultural Ambassador Program at the Mental Health Foundation of Australia. The foundation has been around 90 years, and I am honoured and privileged to be working with Foundation to promote better mental health. This foundation given me an opportunity for a better understanding and awareness of mental health issues. Mental illness, like any other illness, does not discriminate, even the multicultural community or any other community. Today, I would like to share about the MHFA's Australian Multicultural Ambassador Program. The program has been successfully running for the last 4 years. Last year, we had a spectacular array of multicultural ambassadors, ranging from professionals to youth workers who set a high standard with the program. So this year, we are stepping into and organizing this program in 2020 with the high expectations, initiated as the inaugural Australian Multicultural Ambassador Program. The aim of the program is to further engage multicultural and Indigenous communities in promoting positive mental health and well-being. Through a network of dedicated volunteers throughout Australia, it will also provide community leaders with an official platform to become involved in the introduction and coordination of mental health-related programs in their communities, as well as the opportunities for professional development. Our multicultural ambassadors range from professionals, doctors, students, youth leaders, and business people who have demonstrated a commitment to their community and have been selected for the influence and impact they are having on Australians in their own community. As a chair of Multicultural Ambassador Program, my involvement provides me with a sense of belonging and also social connectedness. I strongly believe any act of gratitude by giving, volunteering, or helping others will have a positive effect on your happiness, mental health, and emotional well-being. Mental Health Foundation Australia and many other organizations operating in the mental health space is doing a great work, and we pledge our support to these wonderful organizations. So I encourage you all to join MHFI family and other mental health organizations. And as everybody mentioned, that we also having a national walk for mental health on Sunday at 10:30 a.m. at City Botanical Garden, and the registration are still open and they are free. Please join us on Sunday. And hashtag mental health matters. You can also scan this QR code from the flyer to register. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you.
Well, that brings us almost to the end of the event. We're nearly there. I'm as hungry as all of you. I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank Mental Health Foundation Australia, and in particular Mr. Vasan Srinivasan, the chairperson, for giving me this opportunity to be the MC today. So these are the last few words from me, and then I'll hand it over to our Vice Chair for the vote of thanks. One last thing that I'd like to say is it's okay to not be okay, but it's not okay to stay that way, because mental health matters. And that's your MC signing off. Over to Mr. Jim for the vote of thanks.
Well, there are literally a cast of thousands, but I really do have to mention them because they're all very, very important. I first of all want to thank the Federal Minister, the Honourable Peter Dutton MP, for launching our event and taking time out from his incredibly busy schedule, especially at this time of pandemic and all the issues that he has to deal with at the moment. And of course, the delightful Kiralee Dutton, her address. Thank you, Kiralee, Director of the Mental Health Foundation and a vital asset to the Mental Health Foundation, I might add. Our thanks to Councillor Vicky Howard for her address. Auntie Peggy, you're always wonderful. You always get up here and you do a wonderful welcome to country, and you always link it into current issues that we face as a nation. So I thank you very much. You're the social conscience of our nation as far as I'm concerned. Professor Jean Moyle, University of Queensland keynote address. Just wonderful information that you provided, which I will surely plagiarise at some time and won't attribute to you at all. I'll simply say how clever I am and you had nothing to do with it. No, it's not true. I'll be singing your praises for a long, long time. Dr. Kate Hall, Head of Mental Health and Wellbeing for the AFL, for her address, pre-recorded address. Mr. Andrew Crowell, Head of Personal Excellence and Wellbeing for the Brisbane Lions, for his pre-recorded address. And of course our panellists, who were wonderful and drilled down into some of the issues that had been discussed earlier on. And what about our wonderful MC, Narasim Ravi? Let's give him a round of applause for what he's done today. Certainly risen to the occasion and justified Mr. Vassan's confidence in you, absolutely, and I will be relating that message. So you're it for next year too, I think, okay? But especially the work of the Queensland Multicultural Ambassadors, headed by Dr. Ram Mohan, Chair of the Mental Health Foundation in Queensland, here. Wonderful to hear your words and say, you know, how committed you are to the foundation, because the foundation is also very committed to you, sir. Thank you so much. But to all our sponsors, performers, staff, volunteers, participants, to all of you who have participated in person or virtually and made today such a huge, huge success, a vote of thanks. Thank you so much. If I've missed anyone out, I apologise greatly, but as I say, there are just so many people involved in making this day a wonderful success, and in fact the whole of Mental Health Month in Queensland a success. I do want to reiterate Dr. Ram's comments about the walk on the 18th of October, 10:30 till 12:30 at the City Botanic Gardens, Area 4, the entrance lawn, 147 Ella Street, Brisbane. Go to the Mental Health Foundation website for that information, and I know Dr. Ram has also left a flyer on your seats, so should be no confusion. I look forward to seeing you all there, okay? Thank you, and I'll ask our MC to close the event.
Well, I get to speak again. Thank you so much, everyone. A heartfelt thank you for everyone who's made it here in person and all of those who are watching us live online. I hope we all got a lot out of today's symposium, and a lot of the strategies and ways to improve that have been suggested by all the panelists in our keynote addresses will be implemented in the near future. And there's a mental health and promote a better mental health, not only for sports persons, but for all. Thank you so much for making it today, and I'll let you get going for lunch. Thank you so much.